Yes, that's right. I am going to teach you how you can turn a photograph into a seamless texture in Procreate. The steps are pretty simple, but not easy. So I have this image that I imported into Procreate, and I'm gonna start with this setup instead of having a perfect setup first, because I want to introduce you to the settings. So I imported this image from unsplash.com, great website for free images. So I'll go into the settings, and then on the second one, the canvas, I'll click on crop and resize. Click on settings. By default, you see this link that is telling you the width and the height are connected. So if you change one, it's going to change the other accordingly. I'm going to break that link by clicking on that link there, and then I'm gonna go with the higher number because that is representing the height. So I want to have as much of that texture as possible. So I'm gonna copy that same number. So let's say I'll just make it 4000 just to make my life easier, by 4000, and now I'm gonna hit done. So this is the result. Why did I crop it to square? Because that is the ideal aspect ratio for a texture. Okay, now I want to turn this texture into a square image. So I'll scale it up a little bit, and at this point here I can scroll it up and down to see which side of it has a better texture. And I think this one looks pretty good. So I'm gonna deselect. Then if I select again, as you can see, automatically it's going to trim it. So now I have a square image of that texture. So here are my layers. I'm just gonna make a safe copy of this. I should mention that by scaling it up and scaling it down or trimming it, especially that now I'm going to scale it down, it might affect the pixel quality. Just something to throw there, meaning that if you can prevent that, or it's something to test and see if maybe it's not gonna do that much. So just a side note. Okay, so my next step is going to be shrinking this texture down. As you can see, it snaps to the center here. Okay. Next, I am going to make a copy. Turn it all the way here. Then I'm going to click on flip horizontal. Next, I'm going to select that layer, the new layer, then tap on it and click on merge down. So now both of them are merged. Now I'm going to duplicate it, select that layer, and now I'm going to flip it vertically. And as you can see, there is a teddy bear there, so that is not really good because that makes the texture not ideal for repetition. You can also see some smudges or splats here, so that's something that I need to change. So with that said, now I can go back to the main image, and with that setup that I just showed you in mind, now we know that these areas and here, I need to work on them to unify them in a way that they would be similar or not to be detected when it comes to repetition. This here is darker than this area, so I need to darken this or brighten the corner. I think if I brighten this corner here or this area, it would be more ideal because this has a lot more space being occupied. Okay, so I'll go here into curves. If I hold that whole line, it's going to affect the entire image. But if I make a pinpoint here and a pinpoint here, you can see here, this is where it dips, and here, this is where it peaks. So if I push this down, hue, saturation, and brightness, then I'll go back to curves. And if you have areas that you want to clone, then you can go into the effects, click on clone, So the way clone works is that you have this circle. If you click on that circle, you can move it anywhere. This circle here is the target or the source of the texture you are cloning from. So let's say, for instance, I want to get rid of this bright splash or splat, just so it wouldn't be too obvious around the edges. So I'll grab this somewhere here maybe, and then go and paint that there. So now it would be less obvious. And of course, the brush plays a major role. If you go into the brushes here and pick something that has a nice softness to it, it helps you on achieving a less noticeable result. Let's say, for instance, this area here starts to fade away. So maybe I can grab this here. In Procreate, if you want to paint, let's say like that, if you click and hold, then it does this, right? So what I was doing there with the clone was to hold it here and then click and hold. And now you're seeing the final outcome before you confirm. So you can see the before and after right away. And with a gentle pressure on the pen, I get different threshold of featherness. I can also create a new layer. I want to brighten some of these areas here. And I want to have control over how much of brightening I want to apply. In the meantime, I want to make it a little subtle. I'll select that layer, go and apply a blur to it. Gaussian blur, and then with a finger slide. I don't want to blur it too much, just so it would be more effective. Click on the N here, and that's going to change the blending modes. So let's see together here. I'm gonna pick and choose, but ultimately overlay would be a good choice, or maybe add. More importantly, if I select one more time here and lower the opacity. Now notice this, when I take it all the way down, your eyes are now refreshed and it's gonna see that as a much darker spot than it should be. So I'll just give it like 10%. So that is another technique, and here's before and after. So once you're done with that, let's assume this is all great, and let's say you can also treat this. You can see here, zooming out, this is a bit of a splash, so I'll do the same. Here's a new layer, and I don't really care about those areas here, because once I do blurring, it's gonna fade them along the way. And additionally, this is where it gets even more interesting. Let's see, I can go into the effects and add noise. See that? Let me show you. Before the noise and after. So it's already now super ready to blend in. And speaking of blend in, let's go to the blending modes. So remember, this area was brighter, so my goal is to make it darker just a little bit. Hard light or soft light would be good. You can experiment. It's honestly, the whole work around doing seamless textures is oftentimes case by case. So here it was like that before, then just a little bit of darkening. And if you want to see really the result, whether you did something or not, see, it is all about the subtlety. I still feel that this is a little vague and I could add more details to it, but I'll just call it done for now. I'm just gonna select these, group them, then select that group, flatten. Okay, now that I have flattened that, duplicate, hide the original one, then go to scale. This is not nearly perfect, however the main goal for me is to demonstrate for you how the process works. Keep in mind that there are some things that would be a lot more effective for specific textures. There could be some ways where you could use, for instance, liquify or other types. If you're using a texture that has colors, then in that case you definitely need to utilize a hue and saturation. On the other hand, if your textures are monochromatic, then in that case you could desaturate them in a way that you can neutralize them. So like I said, it's a lot of case by case, but hopefully that would give you a good idea about this process. Also, if you know of other tools, techniques and strategies you have came across or you have figured, please feel free to add them to the comments. It would be fantastic. Thank you.